Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories. So subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story: glass bottle tray broke because my manager let it happen. The second story: new guy failed the boss's mission, and the boss was furious. The third story: my manager said she'd give me a computer, so I went to the office every day, but never got the computer. And the first story is: if you absolutely insist that I have to move the pallet immediately, then move it I will. I'm a retail merchandiser. I assist with refits and new store setups, or sometimes just get sent to be an extra pair of hands where a store has too many people off sick or on holiday. And even during refits, we're sometimes expected to work the delivery for the aisles that we've been rearranging that night, as the store's own staff have, for obvious reasons, been unable to access them all night. On this particular shift, we'd been doing the beers, wines, and spirits section. Now this is the sort of shift where you're practically guaranteed to get some wastage. Bottles smash, cans split, it's just as accepted as the price of moving literally hundreds of them in the course of a single night. All you can is hope you're not the one who goes home smelling like a brewery. We'd finished up the actual move, and had started working the 6 pallets of delivery as well, but the store manager was fretting. He was starting to get very antsy about our chances of finishing up and clearing the floor before the store opened for the day, and his main concern was about how we were handling the overstocks. We had absolutely blitzed the first pallet, all hands working it and it alone, in order to empty it so we could stack the overstocks onto it. As soon as the last case of booze was removed from the blue boards, we moved the overstocks onto it, and then split up to work the other 5 pallets simultaneously. As we worked, we added more to the first pallet. When we're in luck, we can get the overstocks from 6 pallets of delivery onto a single pallet. By the time the manager came around dragging a pump truck with him, the stack was about 4 boxes high, about hip height on me. It wasn't the prettiest pallet stack you've ever seen, but it was stable, while it wasn't moving. Someone had gone to fetch a roll of pallet wrap, so we could move it safely, but that's the sort of thing that store staff tend to hide and guard jealously, so we knew he'd be gone a while. Manager: what's this pallet? Someone: delivery overs? Manager: it needs to be off the floor. Someone else: coworker is gone to get the shrink. Manager: I want it gone now. Team leader: it's not safe to move without wrap. Manager: you don't need that if it's stacked properly. Move it now. At that point, he shoved the handle of the pump truck at the closest person, which was me, and he stood back to make sure that we removed the pallet from the shop floor. Now, I'm not the best pump truck operator in the world. I have a lack of proprioception that extends to anything that I'm pushing, pulling, carrying, or steering. Normally, I wouldn't go anywhere near a pallet of glass bottles, but everyone else backed away. They knew what would happen if anyone jacked that pallet up and tried to move it, and they wanted no part of it. The manager obviously wanted it moving though, and it was his store, so I carefully got the forks under the pallet. No ramming it in for this baby. Gently lifted it off the floor and started moving as smoothly as I could. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Enter the slalom of bakery tables and fridges between alcohol and warehouse. I surprised myself by getting past the individual rolls table without incident, but when I started to maneuver around the cream cakes fridge, I heard the unmistakable sound of bottles smashing. I looked behind me to confirm it. A corner of the pallet had decided to acquaint itself with the linoleum-covered concrete floor. Wine, whiskey, vodka, and rum were all mixed in a spreading puddle on the floor. Oh, and on the manager who'd been following behind, presumably wanting his pump truck back once a pallet was stowed away, who hadn't bothered to try and stabilize the collapsing boxes. My team leader had also been following at a more sensible distance. Team leader: looks like it needed wrapping. When we're doing a refit, we strip the entire aisle. Usually 2 aisles at least for BWS, unless it's a particularly small store. When you scale up to that amount of stock movement, rather than working delivery pallets, cages, or totes, usually at the pace of as fast as possible, some accidents are inevitable. I can't understand what the manager was thinking. What did the manager think was going to happen? Most likely I would have refused for safety reasons. They can't punish me for it because my health and life depend on it. I operate heavy machinery at work, and the stability and safety of the load trumps all authority no matter what. My supervisor understands this, and always respects it, so there is never a conflict over it, but apparently you're not so lucky with your superiors. When I did things like this, we had a special contract with the corporation. We could remove any store employee and ban him from the department if he cheated or interfered with our ability to fulfill the contract. And that was fine. Sometimes a few department managers were fired, but most of them, other than the store managers, were smart enough to know when to back out. I don't know what level your contracts are written at, but you can get some fun tidbits you can use if you see them. The next story is, get the new guy to do the order that requires perfection? Sure. Okay, so I worked in a warehouse that had a retail shop attached to the front. We sold all sorts of random stuff from car parts to electronics. We sold wholesale and retail from the same stock. Well, I was in charge of the warehouse. I did most of the outgoing orders. I had systems in place for different customers, as each customer required different results. The same job for one customer could take twice as long as another customer. So we get a massive order to be exported to a nearby country. Hundreds of little parts and no stickers are to be attached to any of it, as our stickers had our pricing on it, and the exported products would be in a different currency. So I start setting up to do the job and putting things in big piles, so they'll stack nicely, but the boss comes wandering out and tells the new guy, who's on probationary wages so way cheaper than me, will be doing this order. I state very clearly that he's not capable of doing it, as this customer requires that no mistakes are made. Errors with quantities could land us in hot water, especially with tax and customs. I don't want to sound like I was God's gift to warehouses, but I was good at what I did because I used systems to double-check my own work. That takes time, though. Who knows? Maybe that's how I came across when I said the dude couldn't do it. In any case, I get into a lightly heated argument with the boss, as I did not want to clean this mess up. He flipped his lid and told me to keep the hell away from the job. MC begins. I stay well clear of the poor dude. He's lost and floundering. I can see he's left the stickers on whole boxes of product. He isn't doing anything by my procedures, and isn't double-checking his own work. Not surprising, as I hadn't taught him yet, which meant the likelihood of a mistake would be huge. He needs help desperately, but I was nowhere to be found. Boss man would never stoop so low as to come find me, so he gets another new guy to help. Second new guy has the same lack of knowledge, so now there are two people doing the job badly. I remain hidden. The days roll on and the palette fades from memory until I hear a frantic boss man screaming about a messed up order. Now, I'm always the first to admit fault if something goes down. It's not valor, it's just less likely you'll get in trouble for something you admit rather than hide. So I go in and see what's happening to try to fix whatever order had been rooted. He's going off like a frog in a sock. His face is red and his breathing is labored. Apoplexy is setting in. He's had to give thousands of dollars of stock away as an entire order was rejected for being totally and utterly wrong. Entire boxes of hundreds of parts are incorrect, as someone has read the part number wrong. There were hundreds of stickers on product. Some parts were oversupplied, and some under, but notably the entire value of the supplied product exceeds the invoiced amount. This is very bad. He comes straight at me waving the pick list like some demented zombie yelling about incompetence and stupidity. He shoves it in my face, and I quickly look at the bottom to notice a severe lack of my signature. There are in fact 2 names at the bottom of that sheet, but neither of them are mine. I calmly hand it back and say those deadly words I had rehearsed earlier. Sorry, nothing to do with me. You'll have to check with those guys. The look of sudden realization was beautiful. I heard him try to blame the 2 new guys and yell at them, but they rightly said we did our best. It was our first time, and OP was supposed to do it anyway. He knows all the procedures, and it kind of fell flat after that. I encountered this sort of thing a lot, but as the head stock attendant, I usually had the clout to tell them to jam it. I couldn't veto the boss though, so this sort of thing tended to only occur when he decided to get involved. Good managers let their workers do their jobs. Bad managers think they know better. I can tell you a similar story. A new employee came to our company. I was asked to train him and show him how to work. I did that and the company immediately put him to work. I explained to them that he wasn't ready to do any of the hard work, but they didn't listen to me. In the end, he didn't have time to do it all, and we blew all the deadlines. The authorities were angry, but there was nothing they could do because I warned them. The last story is, you think you're smarter than me? I don't agree, but I'm going to play along if you pay me more. Another story from college. I was working a job on campus that was a tech job, so I was doing it remotely, i.e. from my own dorm room. Why leave the room when I can get paid to sit in my bed and work? So one day I needed to run a huge script that would take a lot of time. I didn't want to block my own laptop for this job, because it would prevent me from doing other work as the job was super heavy. I emailed my supervisor asking to use a computer in her office, since she had a few empty cubicles with computers. She wasn't a fan, so I decided I'd discuss it with her when I meet her next. The job wasn't a priority. When I met her a month later, she still didn't understand why I needed a computer. She wasn't a tech person. I was doing tech work for a single project, and was the only person doing tech. She just kept saying it wasn't possible. So I decided to not try to explain why it would be better, but act like it's the only option. Given the fact that the scripts sort of touch student data, but not really, I said that FERPA regulations would force me to have to spend money if I had to do it on my laptop, as I'd have to keep it extra secure, etc. Not exactly true, but whatever. Forced her hand, so she buckled in and said she'd get me access to the computer. She said it would be done in a week, so about 10 days later I went to the office to try to use it, but my login didn't work. I spoke to the IT team and found out that she had never put in the request. So now for the real fun. I emailed her saying it didn't work. She wasn't in the office, but that I'd try again the next day. Did this every day for about 3 weeks. Suddenly one day I get a call from her. Never happened before, so I was confused. She asked me what the 1 hour every morning was on my timesheet. I state that it was the time I spent going to her office, trying to log in and then it failing, so having to return and try again the next day. She said nothing and just hung up. By the way, my hourly wage was about $20, so that's $300 over 3 weeks. The next morning I got a call from the IT team stating that the request to give me access to the computer had been received, and that the request would be processed in 2 hours. Lo and behold, that afternoon I had an email confirming I had access, and the next morning when I went into the office, I had access to the computer. The way this project was set up, my timesheet went directly to my boss's boss's boss. On paper, I reported directly to him, so I imagine him seeing this weird timesheet with no work done, but 1 hour billed every day would certainly have been a fun conversation for the bosses to be having. And she still didn't understand why I needed a computer. She wasn't a tech person. I need a bigger computer than my laptop to run the analysis. Then point to your poor malnourished laptop, and then at the big beefy machines out there. Edit. Adding some context about why I CMC. As the only tech person in a huge non-tech department, they literally used to sometimes pass letters between offices instead of send email because of how non-tech they were. There was a dedicated person whose job was to move between the offices of this department, spread over campus to pass and collect letters. Yes, they had their own internal mailman. There was a lot of hostility towards me because I knew what I needed, and it was always different from what they wanted to give me. As a result, when she said 10 days for a task that takes a few hours, I knew her intention was to hope I'd forget, which was something she'd done in the past, and I'd let it slide. So after 10 days, instead of asking her again, I basically decided to behave naively and act like it was a technical issue, or IT taking longer, and of course she would have made the request. Given that I had confirmation from IT that no such request had been received and had seen it marked down on her whiteboard to-do list, I knew what was up. Haha, I'm surprised how quickly problems are solved when you make it a problem. In my years in the office, I've learned that your own time has absolutely zero value to your employer until it starts costing him money. Her inaction cost her company money. He was told that access would be granted within 10 days. He complied and waited 10 days before trying to log in, and then made a daily commute of 10 hours to try to log in to do his job, knowing full well all along that he would be paid just for the commute. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a nice day.